and now is referred to as tactical urbanism, which I think is a fabulous name. But at the time, it was just BBB, Build a Better Block. And it meant taking a block and dressing it up like you would set a stage.
And I think all of us, and I'm not from Brownsville, so I can tell you.
Because as I said, I had the privilege to work with the students.
Then you will achieve.
That's right.
Okay? And so I think that was a great part of, your boss when he came down here, and he had.
So this became home away from home. And I'll echo Jesse. Part of it is they're just the wonderful people that.
It's a welcoming place. If you open yourself up to people, people will open themselves up to you, will accept you, even though if you're not from here.
I always thought dreamers and doers are hard to find. And I found that what you had was a dream and you wanted to get it done. And I think what we're sitting here with this panel is that all of these people brought it together.
Good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Rose Gowen, retired city commissioner for Brownsville, Texas. A very large group of friends and partners got together to create some magic in the city of Brownsville. I'd like to introduce everyone. Please introduce yourselves. Jesse?
Hi, I'm Jesse Miller. I'm an architect, and I also serve on the board of the Housing Authority of the city of Brownsville. But when I first met Dr. Gowen, I was working as a designer for a nonprofit called Building Community Workshop, or BC Workshop. And we focused a lot of work here in Brownsville on community-based planning, affordable housing, drainage. And that was back in 2013. I meant to move here for a year, and here I am still.
I'm glad you stayed. Tony?
Okay, well, yeah. Welcome home, Jesse. My name is Tony Martinez, and I was the mayor of Brownsville for about 8 years. And I was the campaign manager for this young lady over here when she ran for city commission, and it was probably the best thing I ever did.
And I have to officially on camera thank you for helping me become elected, and thank you for answering my call when I said, Tony, I really think you need to run for mayor because I need some help. We're doing some good stuff, but I really need some help. So thank you officially on camera.
It was fun.
And Murad?
I'm Dr. Murad Abu Saleem. I'm trained as an architect. At the time of these wonderful projects, I was the founding faculty of the architecture program at University of Texas at Brownsville and Texas Southmost College, and later continued to serve as a director and a faculty at the Texas Southmost College.
So welcome, everyone. We have a lot to talk about today because there was a lot of good stuff that happened during our years. And the whole series is called Brownsville in Motion. And I know Murad was in my kitchen when we founded Brownsville in Motion. After I was first elected, I wanted to kind of brainstorm and find out how we could do things. And one of the things that we wanted to do was create a bike peds network throughout the city. So Marklin, our MPO director, and our planning folks, and Dr. Abu Saleem, and some local cyclists, and a gentleman who we all know and loved, and rest in peace, Gene Novrotsky, came to my kitchen actually I think we had 3 meetings, pulled out maps and brainstormed about how we could connect corridors around the city. And Gene named us Brownsville in Motion, and in his honor, we are calling this podcast Brownsville in Motion as well. So there were many pieces that needed to be put together, policy and all sorts of thought, and there were different ways to collect and build political capital. One of the ways that we did that was with creating what we called the Vibrant Lecture Series. We wanted, for instance, to pass a complete streets ordinance, and to before we put that on the agenda, we had an expert speaker come speak to us about what is a complete street, and then we put that on the agenda and passed it. So Complete Streets Coalition was the first. Dan Burden, Tony, you were mayor when Dan Burden came with AARP for age-friendly communities. Do you remember that process?
Yeah, to a certain degree, what happens was I think I remember the big picture, okay, to be honest with you. I think when we start to reminisce about how everything gets started, I think, Doctor, to be honest with you, you had a great vision, and also, I always thought dreamers and doers are hard to find, and I found that what you had was a dream, and you wanted to get it done. And I think what we're sitting here with this panel is that all of these people brought it together, and then, at that time, the different people that you brought to Brownsville kind of gave us a real good insight of what complete streets looks like. And a complete street basically is every mode of transportation gets a chance to do what they need to do. And I think that was the genesis in the beginning of what I thought to myself was, how do you make Brownsville that walkable, transportation-free community that we all probably dream about, but we think it can never be accomplished.
It's true. It's true. We don't think about that. But we did it, or we're doing it. We're continuing to do it. And Gil Penalusa was the third who talked to us about Ciclovía and livable communities and access to all and dignifying transportation for folks means as well as those with no means. And that kind of brought us around to, at the time, there was still very little money that was being allotted to these projects. And trying to accomplish some of these things, I needed to find some, let's call them free ways to accomplish these initiatives. And I found out about the TSC architecture department. I didn't know TSC even had an architecture department. And I met Dr. Abu Saleem and his students, and I went to one of your presentations, the class presentations. Tell us about how your students worked.
I always consider myself, and still consider myself, a very lucky person. Throughout my career, when I established the architecture program here in Brownsville, we were looking for this unique way of providing a learning experience for our students where they can engage in a hands-on type of training. And we embarked on the service learning pedagogy. And we were very lucky that the city and its commissions, the staff, the city planning department, and other nonprofit organizations embraced that concept, and they allowed us to have these opportunities for our students to engage in projects that otherwise might not have been, addressed in a design, process. So one of them was immediately, I can't remember the timeline. When did we meet first at your kitchen, or it came after? But one of the first projects that we did with my students was actually going a kind of a comprehensive survey of the downtown area. Back then, we built a scaled model of the whole historic downtown district, and we kind of identified the buildings, the vacancy, the type of usage of these buildings, and so forth. And soon after, we embarked on coming up with a comprehensive layout of hike and bike trails, and in which part of it would have cut through the downtown area, including the 6th Street, the building, now what we call Belden Trail, and so forth. So those were visions that were, kind of came about by the students, the young individuals who were born and raised in Brownsville or in the Valley in general, and they will be the next future leaders of this community. And when we presented these ideas to the city and so forth, there was kind of this embracing of the ideas, right, rather than rejecting it. So I had the least contentious and the most fun part of the process, right? Where we'll go through this initiative, we'll interact with the city officials and stakeholders and so forth, present it to the community, and then you guys city commissions, the mayor and others will take the daunting task of finding the grants and creating the policies and going through the voting process to get these projects done. So I might personally consider myself one of the luckiest people on this panel in particular, because as I said, I had the privilege to work with the students, to see them grow as individuals as they are engage in these kind of projects, interacting with officials and city leaders that otherwise would not have the chance to, and the other side of it, see it happen and see it materialize. So,
and for me, a younger elected official with absolutely little, if any, political capital, your work or your students' work was magic to me, because I could go talk until I was blue in the face to certain administrators at the city or even other elected officials, present company excluded, and I could tell them about the idea and the concept and everything, and they're just like deer in the headlights. And they just couldn't conceive of it. It just like, no, this is Brownsville. But when I brought the students' work and said, look at this graphic, look at this idea, look at why this could be done or why it should be done, then it was a different story. So their work provided me the design power, if you will, to move those initiatives forward. And then when Tony became mayor, you wanted to do down the Market Square.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Jesse and his group over there at that time, it was exciting because of all the energy that was being produced. But I think in retrospect, it was the energy of the young people and then the voices of the people that were already here, and combine those together. We got enough energy going. I think some of our fellow commissioners listened to the young people and then had to pay attention to the older people because they voted them in. So it was a nice flow of ideas, a nice energy flow of the young people. And I think some of the people, what I remember is that I had a distinct feeling when we first got on this commission, was that people wanted to be heard. They wanted to, and you had to go out and to meet them where they were.
Sure.
And to me, at least from my perspective and looking back, was when you all talk about timing in some of your sessions, it was like this was the moment to be met by things like Jesse and Murad and yourself, and we got lucky. We got lucky because the timing was perfect. And so, was it easy?
No.
but the timing was right, and so we had the opportunity of meeting the moment, if for lack of a better word.
And Jesse, BC Workshop was really here on a Ford Foundation grant with CDCB.
Yeah. At that time, this idea of bringing in planning and design to different processes was something that the Ford Foundation was looking at, and Dr. Garcia was on the board of the Ford Foundation at that time. And so there was this opportunity with Brownsville. Brownsville was open ears at that time to really talk about what does it look like to do community engagement when we're thinking about planning, when we're talking about even with CDCB, who's Come Dream, Come Build used to be Community Development Corporation of Brownsville. They were replacing dilapidated housing throughout the city and in colonias, but they really only had one model. But they wanted to offer this idea of custom design or customized design to those homes, because they realized that there's not a one size fits all for almost anything for people, right? And so if you look at that at a house, it's easy to kind of accept that. But when you start to expand to a neighborhood or a city, it really is important to open up that conversation and recognize that we do have city employees and elected officials who are experts, but we also have residents who are experts of where they live, of their life experience, and they have things to bring to those processes, not to just help make decisions, but really be informed, and then inform back. And so it's really this like kind of mixture, this like almost like a recipe of things coming together where the individual parts become better than the whole becomes better than the individual parts.
And I think that was a new thing for the city of Brownsville, planning in that way. That we hadn't, as a city, that had never been done, and that community outreach was really not well understood. If I remember that correctly.
Well, the interesting part about it is the valley was growing up, to be honest with you. And what we did learn was TSC and the university had a lot of resources that we could have utilized and did utilize. And there was a lot of voices of people coming back to the valley. And there was a diversity that we hadn't had before. And if you recall back at that time, most cities back then, when you're looking at the administration, the city managers and the city people that were populating the administration were all kind of like ex-police people or different kinds of administrative arts.
Sure.
And so now you had to go into a different model. And that's where you have to get people like Jesse and Murad, and you had to have professional people to come in here. And there was actually, professional city managers that were important to visualize what it is that you could do with your city. And we also had the blessing that Brownsville was a gorgeous city, and we had resorts. We had, like I said, we had to meet the moment because everything was ready for us to do something, and we just had to kind of like spark the fire to get it going. And I think that's something that I think we should never forget when we talk about something that is an opportunity for you. As they say, opportunity knocks once, temptation often. Okay, so you have to take that into the mix. But we had the opportunity, and I feel like with the leadership that we had, that we were able to take advantage of that opportunity.
I agree. We wanted to do Market Square. You felt strongly that the city should put the first money into beginning downtown revitalization. We had this plan that the students had conceived to give us some visuals. And so one of the things that I learned was a tool called Build a Better Block. I had gone to a conference on transportation, and Build a Better Block now is referred to as tactical urbanism, which I think is a fabulous name. But at the time it was just BBB, Build a Better Block. And it meant taking a block and dressing it up like you would set a stage for a play, the way that you think it would be vibrant. So adding potted plants or bringing in temporary chairs and closing off the street to make it pedestrian if it wasn't already pedestrian, and just really setting the stage like you would in a play. And I remember the first day that we called the downtown we took Market Square most particularly because the buses were being moved out. The multimodal station had just been built. And so the question was, what will become of Market Square? It's no longer a bus station, but now what can it be? And so I remember calling the vendors into a meeting, the little restaurant and shop owners that were around Market Square, who really were only used to their shoppers being people that got off the bus and changed buses downtown. And the downtown manager at the time was there, and you and I were there, and two architects from BC Workshop were in the back of the room. And the crowd was wholeheartedly against what we were proposing to do on a Sunday afternoon because it would close the street to car traffic for all of 4 hours on a Sunday. And they felt that even closing for 4 hours, a car, the only way they were going to get a shopper would be either in a bus or a car. And so if we made it a pedestrian-only zone for all of 4 hours, and the downtown manager was very loudly against what we were proposing. And you and I were standing at the front of the room, and after everyone, every time someone would say something negative, one of the BC Workshop architects would raise their hand. There were two young women in the back, and they would say, well, how about if we do this? And they had listened and kind of established a cross argument to it in a positive way. And I remember looking to them after the second or third time they did that, and more negatives were coming at us. And I remember looking at them like, okay, Your turn. And those two young ladies were the reason that I think turned the tide for us to be able to do that first one. And then I remember it was a great success. There were hundreds of people that came into Market Square and music playing. And I remember Calvin Walker did a giant chessboard in the street, and the Parks Department brought in giant chess pieces, and the restaurants opened their doors and put out chairs, and all of a sudden you had a European feel to eating in the street, so to speak. And the shop owners all earned more money on that Sunday than they typically did. And we called a post meeting about a week later, and all of them were clamoring to do it again, do it again, do it again. And here we were like, oh, well, a week ago you didn't, you were not interested, but they needed to have that visual. They needed to feel it, touch it, experience it to be convinced that it was a good thing. And I think those young architects were so important in turning that tide for us in that initial phase. And that those build a better blocks were fun. I mean, I remember them as fun.
I still have the T-shirt. Again, what I remember most vividly, and Market Square has always been one of my favorite spots. But if you recall, there was a lot of young people. Yeah. There was, again, a lot of energy. And when these people opened up their doors and put out their little plastic chairs and put out their tables, you really saw kind of a metamorphosis of what was happening. And then, as you mentioned the other day, when you saw the little bar, the little nasty bar called La Movida Bar, to really open up, and all of a sudden, you never saw that place open. I mean, whatever it was, it looked seedy, even from the outside. And so they opened up their doors, and all of a sudden there was fresh air flowing out and into the market, and people were actually looking in there to figure out what the hell was going on in there.
They had two little chairs out with a fern on the table. I'll never forget the fern. And people were like, "Did you see the fern out?"
Well, everybody was having such a great time. There was music, there was energy, there was laughter, and there was profit for the merchants. And all of a sudden, you turned it around.
And your students came out and washed windows and doorways.
Well, it was fun. Yeah, I was there. I was actually standing one time with Roman McCallin, who used to be with the city, and we were putting tarps.
Remember, for sure, we strung tarps across the street.
Somebody took a picture of that and posted like a doctor and a city official putting tarps. Like, okay.
So, and I don't think anybody really knew what to expect. And I always had the idea, you never know what success looks like until you see it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I think after that, a lot of people understood that the Market Square could be really gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I think your students, because I remember all the drawings, and you guys had all the buildings already marked. And then the bishop was involved in there too. And you guys did a patio, like a cathedral patio in the back for in front of the cathedral. All of it, which was marvelous. Now, some of those things took off, some of them didn't, but I thought the students was what made Market Square get the fire that it did.
So one particular aspect of that project we did back in 2010 or 11, I can't remember now, there was this building along the 11th Street. It was vacant, and the students came with a vision of renovating it and fixing the facade. And the city took upon that because it was owned by the city, and you guys fixed it. And it became the headquarters for PC Workshop for years.
I remember that.
To where they start working with the city and other nonprofits to bring up, better projects and better ideas to improve the life of our community. And then, years goes, and then the next generation of the students were presenting the new idea in that same place that, a year ago or two were just vacant spaces. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it was awesome to see not just the idea as a beautiful render, but to be embraced and supported and actually implemented by the city. That's like the utmost.
And I think Edna's students that did the study for the West Rail Trail that we'll hear about in the next segment, they had their public presentation in that space as well. So all of a sudden, this rundown space became beautiful and alive and activated, and that was all very powerful. And then there was the chalkboard. Do you remember the chalkboard on the side of the Movida bar that said, "Before I die, I want to." And
everybody got to write it.
Everybody got to write stuff in there, and there was really interesting things that they wrote.
Yeah.
It was
absolutely.
And part of this about it, like the community engagement part, because I want to go back to Maggie and Emily, who were the two BC workshop folks back then, who were at those meetings, is that change is so, it's inevitable. We can't escape change, right?
Right.
But it's really hard to accept, oftentimes. And so that community engagement is not simply doing what somebody tells you. It's a conversation to help understand what the pushback is and to see where the opportunities are and to recognize that, like business owners, they've already taken a chance to invest their life into doing something. And the idea is to make that better. It's not to hurt them. And so when you start to build the community engagement process can build that trust where the actual vision can evolve. It's rather than showing up and saying, we're going to do this, the fact that conversation happened is what brought people on board a little bit.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And, then once everyone had agreed that it was a good idea to do Market Square, then we still had to get the funding. And that was pretty magical as well.
Well, like I said, the moment has to meet you.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was kind of interesting was that we did have some litigation going on with AEP at the PUB situation, and we had a chance to go to Dallas to go try to do a mediation. And as a mayor, you get to sit on the board of PUB, and you get to be mayor of the city of Brownsville. So you wear two hats. So having been a lawyer for a few years and going up there, I took this opportunity to figure out how we were going to craft something so we could kind of funnel a little bit of money into the downtown. But this was after building a better block had already occurred.
Right.
So we had a little bit of momentum, let's put it that way. And so we were able to talk everybody into a settlement, which was good for everybody. And then we were also able to funnel some of that money back to the city that was unrestricted, that was available for the building of the downtown. And I think, again, what most people, and we're doing this to help other folks have kind of a playbook for the future, is that, as much as you'd like to get things done, it always requires money. Okay. And so if you have a great idea and you have nothing to back it up, and then you got to have the ability to sit there and say, how do you get that done? And so you have to start looking for funds wherever you can. And so what we did, we saw some funds there, and we made part of the settlement was to get money into Market Square, and it helped.
It did, but I do remember as well, we still had to have 4 votes to approve the use of that money.
That's right.
And I remember that night sitting on the commission because we had 3, but there was a swing vote and we had to bring it home, and we did by a narrow margin.
Well, and again, they always tell you when you get to be mayor, what is your hardest job is to count to 4. And so, but in truth and in fact is, again, there's a difference between being stubborn and persistent. And so the city of Brownsville has got the second most, historical buildings in the state of Texas, next to San Antonio. And so when we always say, and we have resacas, they were just as gorgeous as anything can be. So when you have all of these elements and you don't take advantage of it, and it's not always because people don't want it, it's because they don't see it.
Right.
And so once, you had many people say, you got the most beautiful city in the valley. And I'm going like, I think we have the most beautiful city in Texas. And they say, how about the world? How about, you keep on going. But if you believe, remember,
right.
that was our motto.
Yes.
If you believe in Brownsville, then you will achieve.
That's right.
Okay? And so I think that was a great part of, your boss when he came down here, and he had the charrette, and then we all started looking at things in a different way. Murad brought us a different vision, but brought us a different lens. And so when you start taking a look at all that and looking back, you go like, we did embrace the moment.
We did.
We did. And I suggest that for the future, that embracing the moment, knowing the moment is there and knowing how to embrace it is the same thing as timing.
Yeah. I agree. And another moment we embraced was building a model neighborhood trail for the first time, because we had the battlefield trail before either of us were elected officials, but that was the only trail that we had in the city. And we wanted to put forth the notion that trails should be throughout the city, as we discussed in my kitchen, that trails should be accessible to all. And so we had been able to use the plastic bag ban funds to pay for a bike trail plan, which was very robust and very looking forward to bring a trail to within 1/2 mile of every home in Brownsville, which was extraordinary. And one of the first corridors, the first corridor that we found, was Belden Trail, which was a spur line off the railroad back in the day. And it was basically an alleyway that had been forgotten, and people dumped their trash, and kids drag raced down it during certain times of the year and so forth. And so we came up at BCIC with the idea of turning it into a trail. It was only a mile, but it would be the connection between the Battlefield Trail and what we hoped one day would be the West Rail Trail. And so we started to work on that. And again, there was no money, and I was told no. And but there was a small Texas Parks and Wildlife grant available, which we went after. We didn't get it, but the second time we did get it. And then came to the reality that, okay, that's only a drop in the bucket. We're going to need more like 600,000 or 700,000 to do this mile correctly. And the grant was for 125. So spoke to Nick Mitchell-Bennett up at CDCB, who had the Ford grant for the BC workshop. And he said, well, that Ford grant is for housing and transportation. And so they volunteered to do the project management for the trail and the design of the trail. That was a huge cost out of that 700 that we needed. And I remember the city folks were kind of nervous about going to the people to ask what they wanted, because Maggie, your BC workshop ladies, were going to go have a town hall in the school cafeteria to see what did the neighbors want. And they were kind of scared. What if they tell you something we can't give them, or what if whatever. But BC Workshop told us, no, we can do this. We can actually have a conversation with the neighbors. And we learned so much from them. I remember the most striking thing was that there were several homes there that didn't ever let their children out to play. And I thought, I live less than a mile from here in a nicer neighborhood, but I can't fathom the concept that somebody a mile away cannot play outside. That it didn't make sense to me. And nobody at the city knew that, because nobody asked. And those folks, families in those little homes, never thought to say, hey, there's a problem in my front yard. So the trail was built, it was designed. The BC Workshop did a fabulous job. And then there was the ribbon cutting. Do you remember when we had the stage over there? And that was right after you got elected, I think. But do you remember what the little ladies in the house did with the media? Do you remember that story?
Can't remember if I did.
The media came out, and the ladies came over to where I was standing, and they said, in Spanish, we want to talk to the reporters. And I thought, oh no, it's going so well. Are you sure? And she said, no, we really want to talk to reporters. So we called the Televisa reporters over to talk to her, and they wanted to thank the city for giving them a new life. That she literally said, new life, that we now had front yards and backyards, and our kids could go out to play. And it was just the most beautiful story.
And to follow up on that town hall or that community engagement, right? Again, it wasn't they didn't go into that saying, what do you want? It really was that conversation. And having that conversation was, oh, wow, understanding that kids don't have a place to play. Yeah. And, part of affordable housing, part of dignified housing is you shouldn't feel trapped in your home because it's not safe outside, right? And so hearing that, the kind of design concept going forward was the fact that on one end of Belden Trail is Riverside Park, at the other is Praxis Sorrive Park, and this could just be an extension of that. It's a linear park in a way.
Right.
And as I look forward to the other trails that the city has done, that community input has led to more amenities going into new trail projects. And so I just want to emphasize again that conversation to understand like fears and problems and concerns in addition to dreams.
I think that's very important to kind of emphasize. I think what was happening beyond the physical aspect of the project is that we were part of this cultural shift, if you wish, like changing the mindsets and the way we do things, and realizing that we actually can accomplish more than what we thought we could, despite the limited resources. And that by itself is actually much more exciting and honorable. Like, because if you have the resources, yeah, it's easy to do, right? When you don't have the resources, that's where you need to be creative, right? So despite of all the limitations, and as I say, again, I go back, I don't even know 1% of those limitations that you guys were dealing with, right? We were able to accomplish that many of wonderful projects. And if you think about it, we tend to say it's a long time, but if you think about it, 10 years period, like you have plenty of trails and gardens and so forth, which bring me the other aspect, my next point, which is because of these initiatives and the success that we witnessed, other entities, nonprofit organizations start taking on and becoming part of that movement, if you wish. Brownsville Wellness Coalition is one of them, comes to mind, where they, again, came to my office one day. I didn't even know what Brownsville Wellness Coalition is. They're like, we want to build 3 community gardens, and you're going to help us design it and build it. They're like, okay. And we're going to do it in 20 days. Like, okay. So, one of them was the Skinner, behind the Skinner Elementary, which now is called Gene's Garden. And yeah, so we designed it and built it. And the other one was on Roosevelt Street across from Fort Elementary School. And it just happened that community garden was actually built on a property owned by the Housing Authority, Brownsville Housing Authority. And the Brownsville Housing Authority, after the community garden was established, witnessed that their tenants in that development across the street were using the garden for not just for harvesting and planting, but also for their social events and social activities. I mean, if you think about it, the developments tend to be small in terms of sizes, so this became their public space. And because of that particular project, the Housing Authority decided moving forward, any new development will incorporate a community garden in it. So the impact and the effect kind of trickled, right, to bigger than just one project. It became more of a cultural thing or a way of doing things in our city, which is exciting, and we hope to continue that movement in the future.
And speaking of gardens, we have to talk about Tres Ángeles.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the very tragic story of parents who murdered their 3 children not far from the Parks Department, and that building quickly evacuated, and it was a place of evil, and parents would tell their kids, don't walk on that side of the street, there's bad humor there, bad juju, don't even look at it, and so forth. But Brownsville Wellness Coalition approached the city, because it was owned by the city, about taking that land, that lot that had become a dumping ground for trash, and turning it into a community garden. And the city said okay, because it was an eyesore and not good. And then the Parks Department or the Public Works Department, or both, helped clean it up. They planted gardens. They were lovely. They recruited neighbors from around. But the thing that was said was that as they were doing this, neighbors came out of their house and said, what are you doing? You shouldn't be there. This is an evil place. You should not be disturbing anything. And as they told the stories of, I remember that night, I heard this, I heard that, I remember the little boy, just very, very tragic stories. it was almost like a group therapy session for them, that these neighbors were able to build a garden while healing themselves. And Tres Ángeles became one of the most beloved and special places in the city.
Yeah, again, I think if you listen to the voices, whether they be good or bad, I think it's important for people to have ownership. Okay. And I think that's what helped us, really, quite frankly, when I was involved as mayor, was that I always believed that people needed to think that this was their place, which it is their place. I mean, that was the deal. And those Tres Ángeles, it was a difficult place, but I spent quite a bit of time there for a while, because what happens is some of the young people, all the neighbors came out. That was a really interesting part about that. People that didn't even know each other, and they lived right next to each other. And there was a Boys and Girls Club, and then they would come over. And then some of the kids that grew some of the vegetables that they were doing it, they went to the farmer's market and they sold. Then they had money. And so it became kind of like a circuitous flow of communication, of community, and it turned something negative into something positive, which again, I think is part of the, it's the ability to listen to someone. And a lot of the young people that, I've seen a lot of the college students go in there and help them all out. So if you can get the young people to get engaged, I think they bring the energy and the future thoughts of what Brownsville can look like, and not be kind of brought in with a fixed idea that Brownsville is old, Brownsville will never grow, Brownsville will never do this. If you can dispel those notions at a very early age, I think you're in. And I think right now this community is about 1/3 under the age of 30. So you got a very young community that has a lot of potential, and again, a great, beautiful place to live in.
So what made you want to stay after that first year, Jesse?
I think it was two things. Folks like you who were just, as Tony, as you say, meeting the moment, right? It was a really inspiring place to work in, and to get to know people. And then, personally, Brownsville as a whole is it's a welcoming place. If you open yourself up to people, people will open themselves up to you, will accept you, even though if you're not from here. It's a very friendly place. And so it was, the beach is there. And you're right. It is a very beautiful place.
It is. And I think really my takeaway from the 8 years that we were mayor, like I said, we dealt with a lot of people that wanted to we wanted to bring them for economic reasons, whether it was SpaceX or otherwise, or we were dredging the resacas, or kind of like giving money to the zoo to help it all out. But I think to the person in all of our economic endeavors, what I heard over and over again, and I think this bears repeating for the future generations, is you have the best hearts in Brownsville.
We do.
And I think all of us, and I'm not from Brownsville, so I can tell you, but I'm telling you, you do have great hearts, and those hearts carry. That half of the people that are here from an economic standpoint are because of the hearts of Brownsville. So I think we need to keep our ear to the ground, and also listen to the beats of those hearts, because that's what makes Brownsville Brownsville. I'll be honest with you.
I came to Brownsville for 2 years, and now it's going to be 17 counting.
Yeah.
So this became home away from home. And I'll echo Jesse. Part of it is just the wonderful people that we live here. I have my own family in Brownsville, away from my original family. People are very humble, very welcoming, very open, and very warm. That warmth that we have in the relationship. Yeah, we might disagree with each other, but at the end of the day, there is this kind of family, feel to it. And also there is this unique spirit about Brownsville. I don't know I can't put my hands on it. Like, you go to the valley, cross the valley. Wonderful cities, but Brownsville just has this uniqueness in a way. You spoke about the Resaca. That was the first thing that caught my attention when I first flew to Brownsville for my interview back then at UTP University. I flew from Lubbock, Texas, and I just got closer to the airport, and I saw this. Back then, I didn't know even they called Rasaka. I was like, saw this water everywhere. Like, whoa, this is awesome. I remember going back to Lubbock. Man, they have something called Rasaka. It's amazing.
No.
I mean, talking about to Lubbock about people that water, right? Like, whoa, that's like so. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just precious, gorgeous, hidden, tucked, community that we have a lot of history, rich history, right? That and beside, I blend very well. Like, I remember walking in the downtown the first week, and people would speak to me in Spanish. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm home. I love the downtown. It reminded me back home, that we would just park and walk and shop and so forth. So it's amazing to see that transformation. I witnessed how I came in 2008. So I'm sure you all remember, there was years where things were really very bad across the river, and it kind of impacted the downtown. I will drive to the ITAC from the downtown, and every day, almost on a daily basis, you will see one business shut after one business shut after one business. And but that's history. Look at downtown now. It's a destination.
Yeah.
I have people coming, architects, planners who have been all over the nation, come to Brownsville from time to time, and they ask specifically to stay in downtown Brownsville. They want to dine in downtown Brownsville, right? Which something make me just so proud
For real.
and honored to be, to be able to accomplish this, and we hope to continue. So
That's terrific. Well, you brought those architects together. I don't remember the year, but when we acquired the Cannery land, the land for the Cannery, we really saw it initially as a home for the Brownsville Farmers Market and then maybe the food bank, or we didn't really know, right? But it was in very great disrepair, and a lot of people felt it should be just knocked down and build something new. But you guys brought architects from up the valley. No?
Oh yeah, it was the Lower Rio Grande Valley AIA, American Institute of Architects, and we were doing community service type of projects, and we came together and we did a charade at the old or the current still Brownsville Fine Art Museum, and we had the community input and engage and listen and talk and see what they inspire for and what they want to have, and here we are. Standing.
That's a great story though, because what happens is both of you as architects, and when I talked to Rose about meeting the moment, that particular building was up for sale. I mean, it was when we were when I was mayor and you were the commissioner, and what happens was that thing got foreclosed on. At one point there was a Dallas mortgage company that had the financing on it, and a friend of mine called me up and said, hey, this thing is up for sale. And I said, well, let me know. I wasn't really sure about how the city would be able to acquire anything, and so I said, I called him back and I said, because Birchville said, hey, can we get it? And I'm going like, let me call up there. To find out. They said, well, sorry, we foreclosed on it. They owed us like over $500,000, but we got a check for $100,000 and we sold it. So I said, okay. So I think I called Birchville back and I said, hey, I don't know anything about what's happened. But anyway, 2 days later, they called me up and they said, you know what? That check bounced.
Oh, wow.
And that check bounced. And I told Charlie Cadwell, the manager at that time, I said, you're sending a check for $100,000. And he says, you don't have permission yet from the city commission. I said, I don't know how that works, but you're sending $100,000. And here we are 10 years later. We haven't finished the project, but it wasn't a bad investment.
No, it's an excellent investment. And I'm glad.
That's a true story.
Yeah.
True story.
And again, the moment was right.
Yeah. And I said, you have to embrace the moment. I didn't know whether it was right or wrong or how we were supposed to do it, but I knew that was, the time to do it. And so we, and that's to me, that's a beautiful building.
It is, and saved because of the vision of the architects in the valley. And you're the architect for design, I hear.
And yes, I am. And it was really helpful, like having that much input into a project was incredibly inspiring. Like, just knowing that all of the thoughts and the love that people had already put into that, it was one of my favorite projects to work on. The construction side, not so much, but look at there. What's there? But yeah, it is amazing. It is an amazing project that started with a lot of vision. And I think that vision has really just continued to keep that thing going. That vision hasn't really been lost despite all of the difficulties. And it's just one of those projects those public projects with so many partners and with so much input that just is going to make it.
It was meant to be in my mind. It was meant to be. And, someone was complaining the other day about, it's taking so long and this and that. I said, you know what? Time out. The building is a complex building. First of all, there have been 3 different mayors that have held to that building, 3 different city managers, a whole host of different city commissioners during those years, and financing package that is so complex that you can't even fit it on a billboard. So to say it's taken a long time, well, of course it's taken a long time in I'm not talking about the construction part, but but it was a work in progress, very complex, needed that delicate touch, and all those hands on it kept it moving forward. So I have to believe it was a good idea to go through that many hands and still be alive and almost ready to open.
Well, otherwise it'd have been demolished.
Exactly.
I mean, that's
or parking lot.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean that the thing about it is you see this a lot, and Brownsville, whether it be our lack of energy or otherwise, we kind of cover up our mistakes, and then so we can uncover them when we're ready, and really restore the beauty of this town. I mean, it really is the charrettes that we had that your partner Brown brought us. I mean, everybody to the man, every architect that came here from across the nation said, this is just a gorgeous town. So and the big thing was that they always say it's got good bones.
Yeah,
it does.
It's got good bones.
Architect thing.
Yeah, it does.
Whatever that means, it's got good.
It has beautiful bones. And again, going back to my earlier comment, like not only the city is embracing this and supporting it, but we start seeing other entities within the city that's embracing that and movement and contributing to it. The housing authority, like just about to open, the El Jardín, right? It's a building that was abandoned for years, and they picked it up and they're renovating it, and it's going to be open for the the community to use. CDCB, same thing. They took the other building, Sampaio building, and they're fixing. So so it became something almost like contagious, like everybody's like want to be part of this movement, which is wonderful and exciting and make us proud of our community, of our city.
El Jardín is a gorgeous building.
Right?
It's a gorgeous building, architectural and otherwise, and it's got that one's got good bones. Okay, but I can tell you when we were during the mayorship was that we had maybe 10 or 12 people that wanted to work on it, and people would say, we can spend $5-10 million. And I kept saying that won't make it. And I think that's the other thing that we learned over the years is if you're going to do a project, you can't underfund it, because all you do is like, you'll end up with a lack of funds at the end. And then you do some they take some shortcuts and it won't work.
Yeah.
So this one was through the housing authority. And people like Sampaio, hats off to him, John Gowen, and a lot of the people that served on that board, and Carla, the executive director, again, goes to show you how you embrace the time, and the timing was just perfect for having that young lady come in and take over and did a super job. And I mean, all of you are aware of the architectural stuff that the housing authority has undergone, and they're nice buildings. They don't look like housing.
No, and the what did I read in the paper? Wasn't it like $54 million in tax credits? Was it?
Yeah,
that'll be for Buena Vida.
For Buena Vida, okay, but the similar thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
For El Jardín,
Absolutely, yeah.
Tons of money for low income housing that Brownsville has never seen before.
Yeah, and again, you have all these beautiful hearts, and those are essential. But that beautiful heart has to translate a little bit into some money. So,
correct,
because that's what makes the thing happen.
Yeah,
and so
I agree.
And that's another thing is that one of those things is you want to make something happen, but you underfund it or don't know how to fund it, you got to remember that funding part, because if you don't do it, then you won't come out with the desired result.
Correct.
And I think back to one of the points you made at the very beginning, it was that we as a city had grown to the point where we needed professional management. And I think one of the most important turning points here in these years was turning to a professional team of management for the city that was able and you appointed the right person for the housing authority, who then appointed the right person for the housing authority director, and CDCB grew up and did wonderful things, and all of those pieces became much more professional and propelled us forward, if you will.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Ramiro, the planning. I mean, he had a professional degree in planning, and it's nice to be able to, learn your trade as you're going along in experience. But in this day and age, especially now with artificial intelligence, you better be well prepared. And these gentlemen are, and so was Ramiro. So there was a host of wonderful things that happened to us. And, it was just fortuitous that we had the ability to get some of these things done. But again, you had to embrace the moment.
Absolutely. I think that should be our closing theme. Embrace the moment and community engagement. Those two things are so powerful. Thank you so much for tuning in with us today. And please stay tuned for further episodes, because there's a lot of magic to share.